I'm Austin Lugo.
I'm Andrew Harp.
This is With Nothing to Say.
Let's talk about Christmas Evil.
Before we get started today, just a quick shout out to our friends at Two People and a Podcast. Your hosts, Quate and Zach, delve into the deeper meaning of cinema, video games, or anything they find interesting. It's a pretty cool podcast. It's very similar to our own, just two people talking about movies, but they also get into video games, entertainment. It's a great listen. If you have the time, please go check them out wherever you hear podcasts.
Just starting off, like this month, we are doing Christmas movies. We needed to watch a movie that you and I haven't seen before. We wanted to pick something that like seemed interesting. Like we don't want to pick like a Hallmark movie. Thankfully, I was able to find this movie, Christmas Evil.
Christmas Evil, also known as You Better Watch Out, is a Christmas movie, quote unquote, about a man who as a child discovers that Santa Claus isn't real and basically spends his whole life obsessed with Santa Claus. And one night he goes out on Christmas Eve and delivers presents to children while also murdering the naughty kids, as you would say.
He's like Travis Bickle.
Yep.
He is basically, he's Travis Bickle. He goes Travis Bickle mode, except it's like Santa Claus. And yeah, it's like, you look at the poster and you're like, oh, it's like going to be like a Christmas themed slasher movie, or late 70s, early 80s. That's kind of the sweet, kind of like the sweet area of like, slasher movies. And it's kind of a slasher movie, but not really. It's not like Friday the 13th where, the idea of the movie is that like Jason Voorhees kills like a dozen people. In this movie, he kills like 4 people. So it's not really a slasher, but it is a horror film.
Mm-hmm. It's definitely much more of a slow burn than I definitely expected something of kind of the classic horror, 1980s kind of cheesy, but there's almost this late Antonioni sort of similar to like Blow Up. There's a lot of like zooms and a lot of just like patience and kind of waiting around. A lot more of that than I expected. I expected to be like pretty fast paced, kind of a lot of murdering and killing, especially with a name like Christmas Evil.
And I think also like kind of Giallo-y influence. So like Dario Argento kind of movies maybe is also an influence. But even in those movies, I think those movies are like way more violent and have way more killing in them than this movie. Definitely more psychological than maybe, like I said, like a Friday the 13th movie, which is pretty simple. Just to kind of like, talk about the movie. It's like, you get this guy, his name is Harry. He's a kid. He likes Santa Claus a lot. It's Christmas Eve, 1947. Him and his like mom and his brother see Santa Claus deliver presents. It's clearly his dad, but he thinks it's Santa Claus. And he decides to go downstairs because he's a little boy, and he decides to go downstairs to like see Santa Claus. And of course he because it's a horror movie from 1980. He sees like his mom and Santa Claus, like basically his like father like groping his mother, right? But he's like wearing the Santa outfit. It's incredible. Kind of like like impressionistic scene. He like runs upstairs and grabs a snow globe. It breaks and he cuts his hands, which is kind of cool.
Doesn't that remind you? I'm sure it's like on purpose, but doesn't that remind you of the opening scene? And because they use that lens that has like, you can see it like it's focused in front, but it's also focused in the back, and like the middle's blurry. Doesn't that remind you of the opening scene in Citizen Kane with the snow globe?
Yeah. It's definitely shot the same way. They probably were like, oh, we have the snow globe and let's do the Citizen Kanes. Like I'm sure they thought of that.
How can you not?
Like, yeah, how can you not? And now it's a year later. He's an adult and he works at a Jolly Dreams toy factory. He's disrespected by his works. And also, like you said, and it's a very apparent early on, he's obsessed with Santa Claus and being Santa Claus.
This whole like I love all of the set designs, because like his whole house is just full of like creepy dolls and like there's like Santa Claus memorabilia just all over his house. And the factory reminds me a lot of, if you ever seen Joe versus the Volcano, it kind of has a very like grimy, kind of like dark. It is a great set design. And of course, Harry, he's been I don't understand why exactly. Like I want to understand like the logic of whoever promoted him, but he was recently promoted from the line to like becoming a manager, and he hates it. Like he loves working on the line. He loves making the toys. Like that's what he cares about.
Yeah, he like kind of like lectures like a group of people like back in my day toys are da, 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 da. Because it's funny because the toys that they make are like they're almost exaggeratingly cheap looking, right? Like they're like plastic toy molds that are one color. Like it's just kind of ridiculous. It's very funny, you know, and it's like everyone wants the toys, I guess, or they're popular, or I don't know.
It reminds me of because recently Emily and I rewatched Jingle All the Way. The way like that one toy Turbo
Yeah.
Man, like just everyone has to have it. It's like the same thing. Like everyone has these like two toys.
But like Turbo Man's a cool toy, right? Like it's like a cool, I guess it's like, you know, cheap,
I
but
mean, is it though?
I mean, it's like he's cool, like he's like Superman or something. Like, I don't know, like obviously, like maybe to us, but to little kids, that makes sense. But these toys are like, they're like one color. They're like they're like the mold, they're the plastic molding that they use to make the actual toys that have like paint on them. So I don't know. Anyway, obviously it's like very impressionistic. Like it's supposed to just like sell you exactly what's going on at that point in time, right? It's not trying to like, I don't know, like be too complex or complicated, right? It's very clear.
But he's heckled everyone because he's weird. Because Harry's he's a pretty weird guy, and everyone
Hates him.
easily takes advantage of him. And so like one of the guys is just like, you know what? I don't want to work this weekend. So I'm just gonna make Harry, even though like Harry's his boss, Harry's just so like incapable of like standing up for himself, or you know, he's not very good at human interactions.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's basically conned into working the night shift, even though again he's a manager. But he's like, well, it's gotta be back on the line because you miss it, right? It's like, oh, I guess.
Yeah, he's basically throttled. Like you said, he's basically throttled to do this thing, and he, of course, he like leaves that night from the shift, and he goes by the bar and he sees that he's that the guy who asked to get his shift off. I think his excuse was that he was something to do with it, like his wife, but he's at a bar drinking with friends, and like he hears him, he like calls him a schmuck, like he like says some bad things about him, and I like when he reacts to him. Like him being disrespected by the guy in the bar, the way that he runs away is very funny. He runs away like a little boy who just like, I don't know, got in trouble or I don't know. I just love that part where he's like, he just turns away and he runs away really fast back to his apartment. I love that.
Talking about the actor himself, I think the actor gives just an absolutely incredible performance in this. It's just like, it's silly and weird, but you can tell that like he's taking it seriously. There's this, I kind of think of it as like a mix between like Bill Murray and most of the things Bill Murray's in, you know, kind of because he has like this kind of dry sense about him. But then there's also kind of the Tom Hanks in Big, because there is this childlike quality to him. Like he can't, even though like he's among adults and he is like in his 30s or something, he has a lot of these like dark childlike features about him, and like the way he reacts to things, the way he like when he goes home and he's holding a toy, you know what I'm talking about, and he's he's singing.
I know, that's so good. He's really good.
It's one of my favorite moments in the film. Like I came into this film with not very high expectations because, you know, it's called Christmas Evil.
I did.
And I was like, I don't know. And I've never been like a huge horror fan, but honestly, like at that moment, I was just like, damn, like that's just an incredible moment, because it's just one shot. It's just him like rocking back and forth, holding this toy, singing. I think he's singing some sort of Christmas song or something.
Yeah, he's like humming a Christmas song, and he's like, just like you said, he's just crushing this toy against his hands. It's incredible.
So good.
He's so good. Yeah, but like you said, like the set, he's got all these like toys everywhere and stuff, and he sleeps in a Santa costume. He does this extremely weird thing. I thought it was gonna be like something like really bad. You know what I mean? Because what he does is that he spies on the neighborhood children, and he makes lists of the bad and good things that they do. I lost my mind when it shows like that one boy and he's like reading a Penthouse magazine. That was so fucking funny. And then later in the movie, he's like walking and he's talking to the kids, like him himself is talking to them. And one of them's like, and the kid, and he's like, what do you guys want for Christmas? And they're like, I want a doll and all this shit. And then the kid's like, I want a year subscription to Penthouse magazine. That was really funny. I like that too. Like right when he says it, it like cuts to Harry's face and he looks like super mad. Like, But he's not like, there's no like, he's not like a pedophile or anything like that. That's what I thought it was going to be, but it's not at all.
Yeah, I was a little afraid there's going to be some sort of, if not pedophilic, at least murdering of children, which no children get murdered in this film. I don't know. It's never clear what he delivers to the bad children, or at least I never.
I think it's bags of dirt, right?
Is it?
Remember, he fills in those bags of dirt.
Oh, because he has the shovel, right? Bags of dirt. I mean, I'm glad he's not, murdering small children, but he does have this sort of innocent naivete to him. Like, even though he's like, oh, these are the bad kids, and he has these books at home where he like writes all of the good and bad things about each of the children.
That's so funny. It's so creepy.
So weird.
But it's also like, it starts out as creepy, but then as the movie progresses, it turns out like we've discussed, he's like a very earnest character.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, he actually like cares about the kids. He cares about them like he wouldn't hurt them, right?
Yeah.
He really only hates cynical, mean adults. Those are the people that he ends up killing, right?
There's almost, and maybe this is because there's that scene, of course, where he's like making the Santa suit. There's this almost like Sam Raimi, like Spider-Man kind of feel to it. There's almost like these kind of.
I don't know why I thought the same thing.
Okay,
too.
you
That's
thought
so
it too.
I don't know why I thought that too. Yeah, yeah. Where he's like putting it together. Yeah, because he's becoming the person he truly is. He's unlocking his powers.
I mean, it does kind of have like those, like it definitely feels like a superhero, maybe like anti-hero, almost like, I don't know why I get those vibes from it, but I think it's because like it's a man, right? He's down and out, and then he puts on some sort of costume, and he lives as this like other existence.
Yeah, it's almost like he like in Spider-Man, it's like like in Spider-Man, he does it not really necessarily because he wants to be Spider-Man, but because like he feels like he has to. Batman, I guess, is kind of the same fucking way. But in this, it's like, I think he really wants to be Santa, obviously. And he also feels like he has to be Santa, right?
Yeah.
Because there's no Santa. He is Santa. He will transform himself into Santa.
He is Santa.
Which, yeah, there's, I don't know. For some reason, that is way more compelling than just like he gets mad and he kills a bunch of people. I love that.
They never say this outright, but it's very clear because there's these moments where Harry's having a conversation with his brother, or like they'll go back and forth with his brother, and his brother has like a wife and kids, and the brother kind of talks about, oh, he's always here on this day or that day. So it seems to me that he's never done this, like he's never been Santa Claus before. He's never transformed himself into. So what do you think like the turning point was for like this year to be the year that he finally became Santa Claus?
I think it was the guy disrespecting him
at the office.
Yeah, I think it was just like a bunch of different things that were happening to him, and then they kind of all came down when the guy lied to him. He just, I think that was maybe the ensuing incident that kind of snapped him. We'll talk about this, of course, more, but like, it is a very delusional thing, right? To be Santa Claus, to want to be Santa Claus. So I think something just snapped in his brain when that guy lied to him. Yeah.
And I guess there's also the scene at the Christmas party, which happens not too far later, where the company's having like this Christmas party, and of course everyone's schmoozing, and there's like, I don't know, like CEOs and stuff there, and there's like the head of something, which the guy's like on TV and he's talking about like, he's like almost talking to the employees through the TV. It reminds me of the opening scene in Gremlins 2. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That stuff. Like I said, like the company is like hilariously like simple, right? Like it's not a real company. It's like a made up horrible like toy company that makes cheap toys and makes all these promises for charity. I love that.
I love it.
That's really funny. Yeah. But like you said, he's like, we're going to donate all this money and like, we'll donate all these toys to this like hospital, but it's like vague, And so Harry like goes up to like some executive and they're talking and he's like, so exactly how are you going to do this? And and the guy's like, I don't know how many like kids are in the hospital. And he's like, what? Like, he's dumbfounded.
Just completely baffled.
He can't believe it. But yeah, that's also might be another ensuing incident that causes him to want to be Santa Claus, right? Because he's like, I'm going to take on the responsibility myself.
Absolutely. Because right after that is the scene where he's like he goes back into the factory and he's like stealing all the toys. And he just like take it. I mean, he has like these he's got like these big like cloth sack bags and just stuffed with stuff. And he's just dragging them out the door.
He also gets some bags of dirt, like I said, for the bad children. Yeah, really from there you get Christmas Eve, right? Like we're here at Christmas Eve, which is basically, the rest of the movie, more or less, Christmas Eve and Christmas morning, where he is now transformed into Santa. You have that great scene where he's basically, like you said, getting his outfit ready. And you have that great scene where he's looking in the mirror and he puts on his beard, glues on the beard, and he like is like laughing maniacally because he's like trying to rip off the beard. And he's kind of like, imagining that he is now become Santa Claus because now the beard is like almost now actually his beard. It's attached to his face, and it's like you said, it's an incredible performance. It's so good.
It's so great. And he's got that van. He's got like a white like kidnap van that he painted like a sled onto. It's so creepy.
It's his sleigh, yeah. His goal is to do his rounds, get around and deliver toys, because that's what Santa does. He goes to his brother's house first, right? I believe he goes to his brother's house. He leaves for toys for his nephews, and then he goes to the one kid who's looking at Penthouse and gives him a bag of dirt, and then he goes to the hospital.
I love the hospital scene because it's like this. There's almost this creepy kind of tone to the hospital, and he drives his little van, and he's got this like sack of toys. And what I thought he was gonna do, I thought he was gonna like break in and like, put the toys or like, go down a chimney or something. But he just rings the doorbell and he's waiting there.
I forgot, like he tries to go down the chimney at his brother's house, right? And he can't do it.
He gets like stuck and he like freaks out though.
He really does look like he's like freaking out. Like I'd freak out too, honestly, because that's messed up. I always think of like the Gremlins scene, like the scene in Gremlins where she talks about like her dad going down the chimney and he breaks his neck. And he like dies in the chimney.
That's why she hates Christmas.
That's why she hates Christmas. Yeah. But yeah, he tries to get in there and he's like, okay, this isn't going to work. I'm going to go through the front door.
I think one of the things that's incredible about this film is how sincere they are about like following this character. And it's never, even though like there's a lot of like funny moments, a lot of funny scenes, you never feel like you're laughing at Harry. Like you always feel like you're there with him.
It's like really sad. It's a sad movie.
Yeah.
Like it's not funny. Like it sounds like it's like funny and ridiculous. And when you read the description, you're like, a guy goes crazy. It's really like about like the end of childhood. It's really like the end of like childhood and the beginning of adulthood, and realizing that adults are like full of shit and evil and they hate, and they're all they care about is like money,
Yeah.
Like that's what the movie is about. It's awful.
Sure is. And even at that like moment when he's on the chimney, like even though it's like funny and silly and like he's stuck, like you feel like terrified for him and he feels terrified, and it takes it very seriously. And the whole film is so sad on a certain level when you look at it.
It was much more sad than I thought it was going to be. But, after he goes to the hospital, which the hospital scene also has a scene where he's like, he's yelling Merry Christmas, and it starts to like fall, snow starts to fall. And that's kind of like the first inkling that like maybe he is actually magic, but it's like, more of like a coincidence probably, but it's funny to think that he might be magical. Anyway, you get the first kill after this, where he goes to a midnight mass at a church in the city. The movie takes place like in New York City, by the way, but it looks like it's like in a suburb.
It's probably not actually shot in New York.
Oh, well, actually, I'm wrong. The movie takes place in New Jersey, and the movie was filmed in New Jersey. That makes sense. Like I said, you get the first kill at the church, which is really incredible.
I love the midnight mass scene. They all come out because it's after midnight. They've all had their mass. And aren't the executives are there too? Because isn't that like the original reason why I went there? It's like the executives were at that midnight mass. I think you're right. He went to go there to confront them. And, he's all dressed up as Santa Claus, and he walks out and they're all like, and of course they've just had mass. So they're a little drunk, I guess. I don't know. They act a little drunk.
They're just mean. They're just mean adults.
Just mean adults. And they're making fun of this man, which poor Harry, he's being Santa Claus. He's just living his life.
He's done nothing wrong yet.
Yeah.
He really hasn't done anything wrong up at this point.
Yeah. It's a little weird, but nothing like cruel or mean or by any means.
Mm-hmm. No, not at all.
But they're making fun of him. They're teasing him. They're poking fun at him. And Harry doesn't like that. He doesn't like that at all.
Yeah. He gets out like a reindeer toy and like stabs one of them in the eye. And like he gets an axe out and he chops their heads. Like it's very great. It's very violent. It goes by really, really quick. Very, quick, obviously slasher, late 70s, early 80s editing. very common. And he kills like 3 people in front of this huge group. Like there's tons of people there, like who just exited mass, and he kills these 3 people and he jumps in his van and drives away.
Just like whatever. I love it. And as he's driving away, I think this is the first time that he does like this thing where he thinks like he's driving a sled.
Yeah, he thinks, yeah.
And like you like hear like a whip, and he's like on Dasher, on Prancer, on whatever. And it's so intense because you're like, oh shit, like he just killed someone. But it doesn't feel like slashery where you're like, like it doesn't, I guess it doesn't feel like satisfying in a certain sense. Like it just feels sad.
He's able to escape them, and then from there you have like these detectives that are now following him as well, which kind of comes and goes, really. Like it's more just like another like aspect that Harry has to deal with, right? You have these detectives that are like on his tail. But I think after he leaves, he like stops at a Christmas party after just killing 3 people, and he like hangs out with them for a while. Like he doesn't do anything wrong. They like him a lot, and he like parties and hangs out with them, and then he leaves. Like there's really like not much to that scene, I guess. He's just chilling with them.
I think it's just him, being happy, just being like, he genuinely loves being Santa Claus. And I think it's more so about like, it's not, I mean, he is childlike and he has this sort of naivete and this innocence, but it's not that he's murdering adults because they're adults. It's that they've kind of lost this ability to believe or have faith, or, just kind of this certain joy. And at this Christmas party, which sort of juxtaposes the earlier Christmas party, it's just like a bunch of adults and kids just like, having fun, being chill.
Yeah.
Although I do love at the end where he like, before he leaves, he's like, now children, you be good and you'll get lots of presents. Yeah. But if you're bad, you will get horrible things will happen. And there's just like this weird, eerie silence.
Right. I totally forgot about that. Yeah. He's like, yeah, you're right. That's exactly what he says. He's like, horrible things will happen to you. and then he, of course, commits another murder. Right after that, right? He goes to Frank, who's the guy that stiffed him. He infiltrates the house, and he gets a Christmas tree star, and he just slices his neck open. Which that whole scene's kind of scary because he kills Frank, like barely, like he cuts his neck. He like falls on his wife. He leaves, and then his wife like screams like at the top of her lungs. It's a very, very loud scream. He runs away. Yeah, that seems very dark because he just like murders this guy, and then the wife has like the guy, her husband, on her, and and there's like kids in the house, and it's very dark.
It's a very surreal scene, especially because like when he first breaks into the house, he's just like leaving presents, and it has this very similar to the original The Grinch, right? Where the kids, like Cindy Lou comes out, it's like 2 kids, they come out, they see him, and he like winks at them like, it's Santa Claus, blah, blah, blah. And it's like very like happy and endearing. But then he walks right past their bedroom and into their parents' bedroom and murders their father. And then when he walks out, like, because he's kind of like he's not like running real fast. He's just like walking out, and the kids right there sitting there. They're like, Santa. And they're just like, Santa Claus is here, even though, their father has just been murdered by Santa Claus, quote unquote, 4 feet away.
It's kind of like the same thing. It's almost like a worse version of like what happens to Harry, right? Mm-hmm. The idea that a figure of such stature like Santa Claus would be able to commit a horrible act of murder or have sex. You know what I mean? Like you can't imagine like Santa doing anything like that. So when he does, it's like the end of the world,
Yeah. And Harry's whole like relationship with sex is really interesting because there are like a couple of like sexy moments. I mean, not with Harry, but there are like sexy moments in this. And Harry has this almost perverse sort of like hate for sex. And I think that's partly right because as a child, he saw his father / Santa Claus being pretty physical with his mother. I'm sure it was just a very uncomfortable thing to go through. But every time there's like any sort of sex in it, like he has this like, he feels very uncomfortable with it. And he sees, right, just like the penthouse thing, right? He sees sex as sort of this evil carnal act.
Yeah, it's like unfit for like children's minds. It's it's an act that should not like you said, it's like a disgusting sort of depraved act. You know, it's not a wholesome Santa Christmas time act. So therefore, you're right. He does have an aversion to it. Well, it's interesting because, you know, his brother, he has like, you know, sex with his wife all the time. You know, like there's like a couple of scenes. There's like a scene, of course, at the beginning where he like looks in and he sees like, I think his brother like having sex with his wife. And yeah, you're right. Like sex, of course, is not like super prominent in the movie, but it's definitely another aspect that they touch on that would, of course, would probably be affected, considering the events that happened when he was young.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting how the parallel between 1947 Christmas, so when Harry's a child and his brother and father and mother, and then you kind of parallel that to the brother and his wife and their two kids, right? Because it's like a similar family dynamic. And then also the mother has like a very similar outfit design as what the wife wears. So there's a lot of times where like, and it seems to Harry, right, he often confuses the two between like his mother and this figure who, you know, even though obviously isn't his mother, I think he has this sort of Oedipal relationship with her. I mean, not like he wants to have sex with her because he's a child, but there is this, you know, she has this sort of mother-like feeling towards Harry, because every time she kind of talks about Harry, she's like, hey, don't, you know, be nice to him. It's Christmas, blah, blah, blah. You know, she's very protective of him in a way that, and he's much more, as in Harry's brother is very masculine in the sense of just like, you know, tough love, you know, that kind of thing.
No, you're totally right. Yeah. It's kind of like they're both kind of two different guys. The juxtaposition between the two characters is very interesting. One of the ensuing incidents later on, because, you know, after he kills Frank, it's like Christmas time. And, you know, I think one of the last things he does is he goes to Jolly Dreams and he activates all the assembly lines. So all the toys break.
Yeah.
He gets like his van stuck somewhere. Right. And he gets out and I think it's like in his neighborhood.
Yeah.
But it's like stuck in the snow somewhere. And then he basically creates a mob, a torch-bearing mob to pursue him. This is also the part where like it's clear that like he's very he has innocent intentions, because like he just wants to give toys to kids. Like he doesn't want to like, you know, do anything bad to them. And the toys like they to go on the side of Harry.
Yeah.
Like this guy, one of the dads like has a knife and he's about ready to like stab him. And the girl's like, no, don't stop Santa. and she's able to disarm him, and Santa's able to get away. That part's interesting because it's like, yeah, if you're a kid, like Santa is you know, he's it, you know,
he's the shit.
Yeah, he's the shit. Like, so it kind of makes sense. They're like all like protecting him from their parents.
Yeah, I love it because it's like it's so. You have so like mixed feelings about this, because on one hand, you know, you have Harry being protected by children, but then the adults are like, hey, this guy's murdered multiple people. Like we're pretty sure it's him. Like we're pretty confident it's this guy. And so you can feel like both sides. I mean, you know that Harry is a murderer and he's killed all these people, but you also know that he has entirely innocent you know, intentions with the children, and he's not murdering people merely for the sake of murder. Like he feels like he's doing the right thing. He genuinely thinks like he's a good person. And so it's kind of like the children versus the adults, right? The ones who still believe versus ones that kind of have lost that belief. Right. So it's an interesting dynamic. And the fact that a little girl, I mean, of course it's her dad, but you know, grabs the knife from her dad. It's wonderful. Yeah, it's pretty incredible. And like we said, he gets away, and like I said, he creates a mob, like literally like it's like a Frankenstein type like mob where they have like torches. They're like, he's not getting out of here. It's very funny. Well, it's like, you know, it's upsetting because it's like, does he deserve to be like, you know, hunted down like this? But, you know, I don't think so. You know, obviously he needs to be stopped because you don't want him to kill anyone. But it's like they're hunting him down, like I said, Frankenstein. Yeah. You know, make long story short, he gets into his van and he drives away. And he gets to his brother's house and they have a conversation that's very interesting. His brother rightfully feels like something's wrong. Mm-hmm. He watches the news about a Santa killing people, and his brother Philip immediely is like, oh, like he immediately feels that is Harry because he's been acting different, right? So he's like, oh no, this is my brother. And they get into an argument. You know, they get into an argument where he's like, oh my God, I knew you had killed those people. That's insane. Why did you do that?
you know, they like blame each other about like, you know, their childhood trauma because early on, like Phil like tells Harry as a kid, like, Santa, that's not Santa, that's our dad, you know, and it kind of leads him into this, you know, traumatic situation where he realizes that, oh yeah, it's not my dad. It's not Santa, it's my dad. So Phil like is very mad and he strangles him to when he's unconscious. You kind of think he's dead. And he puts him into the front seat of the van. And then he punches Phil, his brother, as he drives away.
Yeah.
It's like really sad. Like it sounds like it sounds funny, like it's because it's like, you know, Santa Claus stuff.
Yeah.
But it's sad, you know, it's like it's two siblings confronting each other about traumatic childhood moments.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And of course, the whole time, Bill's like, I was 6 years old. I don't understand how you can blame me. And he talks about how he's always, when like an older brother, he always felt like, I mean, even though Harry is the older brother, he always felt like he had to watch out for Harry.
Right.
And at this moment, it's kind of the confrontation of, you know, Harry always wanting to believe in something and not being able to. And Phil, you know, looking for that support and always feeling like he had to carry his brother. He had to be there for his brother. And so that moment where he's strangling him, and also this is paralleling the mob that's chasing after him, right? It's the question of who's the real bad guy here. I mean, obviously murdering people, even if you're dressed as Santa Claus, not great, but you know, the way the other people act, the other adults act, they're really not any better. Like they're just kind of, right? They're just they're the same coin, right? There's opposite side of the coin, but they're doing the same sort of acts, right? Because the children, he has to drag his brother out to the car. The children are like looking out, watching their uncle, right, be dragged, possibly dead, to a car.
Yeah, I forgot about that too, where the kids like watch him drag his their dead uncle, not dead, like I said, socks Phil in the face, which, you know, it's sad. You know, it doesn't end in a good way. You know, they don't reconcile, they just fight.
Yeah,
it sucks.
Sure does.
And you know, this kind of caps off like the end of the movie where Harry runs away. And, you know, he's driving around and Phil at the same time is like running around to get him, right? Because he feels bad. Phil finds himself in this area where, you know, Harry has now kind of been pushed by the mob to basically run his van off the side of a bridge, I believe.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh my God, he's going to crash and die. But then this is like, I got to say, this is like one of the greatest endings of any like horror movie of this era I've ever seen. It's an amazing ending.
Yeah.
Using the power of Santa Claus magic, Christmas magic, it appears that the van flies away towards the moon as a voiceover reads like the end of The Night Before Christmas, which is like the perfect ending to this kind of movie, because it's great either way. It's great that like that there's the possibility that there is Christmas magic in the movie and he was able to like harness it and fly away. But it's also great too because like it's like his last delusion, right? It's his last delusion before he crashes his van and dies, right? The belief that like he was able to actually fly away and get away, when in actuality he probably crashed his van and died horribly.
Yeah. And I think that the sound design there is also interesting too, because before you even see him like go off the cliff, you kind of hear from like the perspective of his brother, the sort of like crashing sound. So you don't exactly know what's going on. But I do love the idea that, you know, it could be that his brother is delusional and, you know, he's actually dead or whatever. Or, you know, maybe he's used Christmas magic and flown away.
I think it's also interesting too, because I think maybe that's also what they want to happen, right? Like that's what Harry wants to happen. That's what Phil wants to see, right? Like he wants Harry to also, Harry also wants Phil to see that magic exists, right? And that Santa Claus is real and that he is Santa Claus and that he, you know, is going to be okay because he has the power of magic and he can fly away, right? Like it's almost like all these characters are seeing what they want to see when in actuality, maybe he did just crash his van and die, right?
Yeah.
But I love it.
Yeah, it reminds me of this thing that Harry keeps saying throughout. He's like, I finally figured out the tune, right? I finally like I learned the notes to the tune, and they never like explain what it is, but I kind of love.
I think it's like a call. He's talking about like maybe like a calling, right? Like his calling.
Yeah, it's something like that. Like as if, you know, his whole life he has been searching for Santa Claus.
Yeah,
and he's finally found Santa Claus, which is within himself. Which, I mean, I guess, you know, good for him. I mean, maybe not the murder part, but good for him in believing in himself.
I'm also forgetting the part where he's watching the Thanksgiving Day parade and he sees like the end of it where Santa Claus shows up and the kids are like going nuts, right? Like I
Mhm.
think he also like wants the love, not like anything creepy, but he wants like the love and power of children, right? Like their admiration, because he doesn't have kids, he's not married, right? Like, but he wants the like the admiration of kids because he's Santa Claus.
Right. Yeah, it's the idea of kind of just wanting to be wanted, wanted to be loved, wanting to, be cared for by other human beings. Because he lives a very lonely existence. It's really just him, and all he does is go to work and sit at home and his Christmas memorabilia. So his interactions with children, which I love that, like he has, like it's not like he's like the creepy guy, across the
Not
street. Like
really,
the
no.
children, like genuinely, like even before he dressed as Santa Claus, like they treat him as just like a guy they genuinely like as a person. Like they're asking him, what did he wish for Christmas, or like all these things. Like they have a good relationship with him, and I guess he just, perhaps part of it's because like he never like left that childhood mindset, right? He never like grew up, so he can connect with kids in a way that he can't with adults, which is possibly why he wants to dress up as Santa Claus. The idea of just wanting to be wanted or wanting to be loved.
Yeah, I was also very surprised how like I said earlier, like how Taxi Driver esque the movie is. It kind of really is because like in that movie too, he transforms himself,
Mm-hmm.
right? Travis Bickle does, and this movie is the same way. He completely transforms himself until the end of the movie, right? And of course, that movie you could say almost ends on a delusion as well,
Yeah.
right? Or like a dream, a delusion, and this movie too kind of almost sort of possibly ends on a dream or delusion. Yeah, no, I just it's extremely sad, like Taxi Driver, right? Because it's like the people when people die, it's like people aren't really like all that disposable when they die in Christmas Evil. When they die, it's like very horrible and people freak
Yeah.
out, right? Like people like lose their minds, like when like the four people that died do die in the
Mm-hmm.
movie, and he doesn't want to kill people. He's not a maniacal evil person. He just kind of loses it. I was impressed by that aspect of it a lot. I thought the writing was good too. I thought like the conversations in the movie were well written. Like they were quite good. Like I was very impressed.
Yeah. I don't know if it was because I came in with so low expectations or just because it's a genuinely good film, but I was throughout the film impressed by every aspect of it. The visuals, the sound design, the writing for sure. It on every aspect, it really ended up being better than I thought it'd be.
I didn't think there were any like really like cringy or bad performances in it either. Like sometimes you'll watch a slasher movie and they might have some bad performances, which is kind of the reason why you watch a movie like that, right? Because like, and I love that part too. Like when you watch a movie and there's like a really bad performance in it from like
Mhm.
the 70s or 80s, it's amazing. But I didn't really have any problems with the acting all that much,
Yeah.
which is, that's pretty good.
Well, Andrew, final thoughts and rating?
Well, like I said, very impressed with it. I thought it was really good. It just has a good sense of style and writing and characters. And like I said, it has a very Taxi Driver esque progression and plot, but I think it really works well in with like the Santa Claus stuff, like the Christmas stuff. It's very funny, but it's also very sad. It's very mournful, and it's about like trauma and family and all this stuff, and it's definitely a way more elevated slasher than one might expect. Definitely like a really good, definitely probably something I'll watch, every Christmas time. Why not? Because it's a good movie. Like first and foremost, it's definitely better than most Christmas movies I watched. Yeah, really good. I'll give it a 7, but that could easily go up because I really liked it.
Yeah. I have a lot of the same feelings about this film. To be honest, when we were looking for a film and you suggested this, I thought, another horror movie. It's fine, whatever. We'll watch another horror movie. But in a certain sense, I don't even know if I would really put this in the typical horror genre. I think it's more of like a family drama, psychological thriller. I think there's something very, as you kind of say, there's something sort of traumatic about it. And it takes its characters, even though some of the characters have some really ridiculous ideas, it takes them very seriously and sincere. And it feels like a very honest film about childhood and about growing up. And I agree. I think this is a film that I'll want to revisit around Christmas time because there is sort of this almost Christmas spirit to it, this idea of belief and love and adoration, kind of goodness and, being a good person. So I'm also going to give this film a 7 out of 10 because there's honestly nothing bad I can say about the film at this time, at least. And I think, as you said, my rating will probably also go up.
Heck yeah.
Thank you all for listening. Next week, we will be watching Shop Around the Corner. This is the original version from 1940s, I believe, with the one and only Jimmy Stewart. What?
Is it going to be another movie about obsession? He's always in movies about obsession.
I mean, there's some obsessive qualities to it, you could say.
All right, let's go then.
All right, y'all. Thank you for listening. I'm Austin Lugo. You can find me anywhere you are on your social medias at Austin Lugo12.
You can, of course, find me on Twitter at ADHarp24. You can also add me on Letterboxd. Follow me on Letterboxd. Retro Andrew, RETR0 Andrew. I write there sometimes. Yes.
And you can find everything we do here at the With Nothing to Say podcast on Instagram, YouTube, wherever you find your podcasts. Also, an amazing shout out to our wonderful editor, Shannon, who does the Lord's work and does what we could never possibly do in a million years. And thank you all for listening.
Thank you so much.